Shabbat shalom, everybody. Boker tov.
Boker tov.
And to be with you, and good morning to all of you who are participating virtually in our learning. Shabbat shalom, Chag Sameach. So good to be with everybody. In this new world, I'm not going to hand my colleagues the lamed. I'll just invite them to share the words with me as we thank God for the gift of learning Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Harev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu b'fi Amcha Beit Yisrael v'niyeh anachnu v'tzetzaenu v'tzetzei Amcha Beit Yisrael kulanu yodei shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai Kol melamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah. So, Shabbat Shalom. Let me just kind of frame our conversation this morning in the following way. It kind of raises a meta question, and then there's a particular case that will challenge our meta question. Here's the meta question. The one thing we've got left in our pantry during COVID-19 is prayer. That's what we're able to do. We're not able to go to a Project Mana concert together. We're not able to go to APAC together. We're not able to do social justice together. We can't come together. But the one thing that we can do is stream prayer services together. Stream a Seder, a second night together. Stream words from the chapel or from the sanctuary, from this Siddur, out there together with you. And what is the creative tension is that for many modern Jews, for many members of Temple Manual, what I've heard over the years is I cannot connect with prayer. So the one thing we can do is pray together, and many people struggle with prayer. And I want to focus our conversation on when you pray, when we pray, when all of us pray, the quality of that moment, of that hour of prayer. What is it about? Mordechai Kaplan, who was a great teacher at the Jewish Theological Seminary, used to say that when we pray, we should mean what we say and say what we mean. Right? That is, you say a word, you actually know what it says, you know what it means, you believe it, and therefore you say it with intensity. And I want to pause on that and ask whether that actually takes in people's experience. And so here's the larger question before I get to the specific case, which is, when you pray, the next 2.5 hours, from 9:30 to 12, is that primarily for you and for you a time of thinking, a time of feeling, or a time of chilling? Neither thinking nor feeling. When you pray, do you think about what you pray? Like, you're thinking, this is what it says, and I agree, I don't agree, I do agree, I don't agree, here's where I agree. You're thinking, is it, no, it's here, it's feeling, or is it actually neither? Like, it's somehow kind of like a spiritual massage, when you're not, you're not engaging with the therapist, and you're not thinking about anything, it's just a zone. You go for a run, you're not thinking about anything. Or you meditate, and you're not thinking about anything. You clear your head. There are different spaces: massage, yoga, meditation, a walk, when you're not thinking about anything. The whole point of it is to not think about anything, and that you're not thinking, you're not feeling, you're just chilling. It's a blank space, and we need more of that, and that's okay. So to think, to feel, or to chill. So here's the case study that I want to use to kind of frame what is the experience of prayer. Our Christian friends tomorrow celebrate Easter, as you all know. And Easter celebrates, as I understand it, I'm not a Christian, but I've listened to about 1,000 Christian sermons from Andy Stanley, who's a great preacher in Atlanta. Easter celebrates the cardinal thing, the cardinal act in Christian faith, which is that Jesus was dead. He was dead, and then he got resurrected. And the main words in Christian faith, at least according to this one minister, is he is So they take this teaching that somebody who is dead could become alive and could be resurrected, literally. Literally, it's not metaphorically. It's not like, oh, the flowers are blooming in spring. And Jesus is reborn. He is risen. Now, that seems implausible. But what's striking is in Jewish sources, not only do we believe in resurrection of the dead, but we believe in resurrection of the dead physically. I know we all love springtime, and I know we all love, the forsythias in bloom on a rainy day in New England. But that's not what resurrection of the dead is in Jewish sources, right? So, for example, chapter 11 of Sanhedrin says, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek la'olam haba, shene'emar ba'amech kulam tzadikim. All of Israel gets a portion of the world to come, because all the people of Israel are righteous, and then it carves out some exceptions. These are people who are not going to get a portion of the world to come. These are people who are not considered righteous. And what are the exceptions? The first exception is you don't get a portion of the world to come. You're not righteous. These are the ones who don't get the portion of the world to come. Ha'omer ein tchiyat hametim min haTorah. The person who says that the resurrection of the dead is not from the Torah. So not only do you have to believe, according to this, to be a card-carrying member of the Jewish people, not only do you have to believe in resurrection of the dead, that what happened to Jesus, according to Christian faith, will happen to us all, according to this, that we will all be dead and we'll all be resurrected physically, but we have to believe that it's so foundational, it's in the Torah, even when we know it's not in the Torah, right? Chapter 11 of Sanhedrin not only affirms it and affirms its centrality, but it's almost kind of a litmus test issue in the Gemara for thinking that for a Jew, to be a Jew is to believe in the centrality that those who die will be resurrected. Now, one last thing before we talk about what this actually means in your prayer life. I was with all of you yesterday, which meant that 21 times yesterday, 21 times, each of us affirmed in the words we said that God is going to physically resurrect dead people. We didn't say it once or twice, we said it 21 times. Because, and this is the paragraph, this is in the second paragraph of the Amidah. You are just so forever strong, God, your strength. And how do you show your strength? You resurrect the dead people. Nobody but you can do that. There's no other person, no other force, no other being that can do that but you, God. What makes you God is you're so strong. And how you manifest your strength, you resurrect the dead people. And then it goes on, and here's what's so amazing about this, is it gives you a number of examples of strength. Which we set up until the first of Pesach. Your strength is in the weather. In the rainy season it rains. In the windy season it's windy. You support people with kindness. These other people calling seniors and delivering groceries and prescriptions. Then, you also resurrect the dead people with abundant mercy. That's twice in one paragraph. You support the fallen. You heal the sick. You free the captive. Oh, by the way, did I tell you? You also keep faith with those who are dead, who sleep in the dust. Who can even compare to you? You are the king who can kill and resurrect and cause salvation to flourish. And now you all know that the key message of a bracha is in the Hatimah, the conclusion. That's like the main point. That's the takeaway point. Here, what's the takeaway point? You are faithful to resurrect dead people. That's 4 times. Blessed are you, Lord, the one who resurrects dead people. By the way, I know everyone can always take a retreat into the sanctuary of metaphor, but the Gemara in chapter 11 form are you resurrected? Are you resurrected as your 20-year-old self? Are you resurrected as your 50-year-old self? Are you resurrected as your 70-year-old self? I mean, the authors of our tradition take resurrection of the dead very, very literally. Not just he is risen, we will be risen. And the only question is in what age, okay? So that's 20 times plus, last point, and then we can begin our conversation. We all daven Yigdal at the end, right? And the last point of Rambam, Meitim Yechael, L'chai Meitim, Meitim
Yechael Berov Chazdo Ve'ad Shem.
The last line of Yigdal, and hence the last line of Talmud Shabbat is God is going to resurrect the dead people. That's one of the 13 principles. So, my question for you is, when you, and just yesterday you said that 21 times, each of us did. How did you experience that? Did you think, did you feel, did you chill? Not at all. Okay, last point, all of us have ones we love who have passed on. Your beloved wife Sue and your parents. Your beloved Aunt Vanessa, who passed this year. My father and my mother, my grandparents, your father, grandparents, etc. So what I want to ask you is, like, this is not theoretical, this is real. We have people we love, whether a wife, an aunt, parents, grandparents, who have passed. Does this doctrine that we said 21 times yesterday, and all these times every day of our life, does it connect with that lived reality that there are people that we love who are gone, who we actually think we're going to see them again, etc.? So, without further ado, let me just throw it open to anybody. What do you say, what do you mean when you say these implausible but central words?
Can I start?
Please.
So, first of all, a note on the beautiful weather and the flowers. So I thought I was doing justice to that, but then I saw Wes's socks, and I have to retire now. So kol hakavod on that. Anyway,
so it's a gray season, and we need a little, what can I tell you?
Is the camera color camera? Or is it black
so.
and white?
Yeah,
Anyways, so that leads into the next thought, which is the symbolic thought that you mentioned a little bit about, what we can say, April showers May flowers, that, one of the visions of Mechaya Meitim is this ability that God, in theory, has of bringing a rainy season for all the flowers and all the grass to come alive again, and be mindful that, there were times, centuries ago, where the Jewish people were only farmers, and they rely on that. So Mechaya Meitim could be a symbolic view of everything is reviving and we are able to make a living with that. So I have to say that I always find a little not just enough to examine texts that were written 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, with our eyes now in the 20th century, 21st century. So it's unfair because the beliefs were different in those days, the needs were different, and so perhaps in those days they believed strongly, literally, that reviving of the dead. There are so many things we can discuss. We can even discuss about, is the Christian belief of resurrection of Jesus coming from Jewish roots that, Jesus was very familiar with, and Yeshua. And, but if you want to know more about my own feelings and my own, thoughts about this, I like tradition. I'm a traditional person. I like tradition. And, we can talk more later about it, but, many Reform books have changed that Mechaya Meitim text for Mechaya Kol, which means, brings life to everything. And I like to continue saying the Mechaya Meitim, but see it with a different pair of eyes and think about more symbolic, more what it means. And we have so many prayers that we use texts like that, Elohim Shema, when we sing about the Shema, we talk about Shema, the body and the soul, that they both belong to God. And Shema Lach, Be'aguf Lecha in high holidays. So there is a constant reminder that both the body and the soul belong to God, and eventually they are going to be reunited when the Messianic era comes and the resurrection of the dead. you know. So my final thought about this is, I don't think I believe literally in resurrection of the dead, because we don't see anybody who passed away 50 years ago coming back to life physically, you know, or 100 years ago, or 200 years ago. But I'm not sure, I don't believe in it.
So I want to,
Well,
can I?
Before you go, so Elias, in the years that you've been at Temple Manual, you laid to rest your beloved Father. Does this doctrine of resurrection of the dead have any emotional valence for you, that maybe you'll hug your dad again, or not?
That's a beautiful thing. I wish. It's a utopic idea, you know. I know that emotionally and spiritually he's with me. Every time we talk about this many times, his favorite prayer was Unetane Toke. So when I'm singing that, when I'm leading congregation in that prayer, he's with me. And in a way, he's coming alive again for that prayer with me. You know what I mean? But it's more in the spiritual sense of it, not physically. So.
You keep harping on Mechayei HaMeitim as people, dead people, dead people, dead people. Look, it says in the Gemara right here, dead people, right? Okay, and I hear you on that because I've studied those texts too, right? But there actually is a question about what do you mean by dead and what do you mean by people? What Elias is describing, that sense that someone can come back to you even when they're not literally alive, is a Mechayei HaMeitim. Every time he feels his father with him, that is a Mechayei HaMeitim. And which father does he feel, what era, what time, whatever, that's actually a real question.
Oh, by the way, I want to be 20 again.
Right, right. So, and then the piece of Mechayei HaMeitim, I mean, I feel this, first of all, why not, right? I'm with Elias on this, like, what do I know? Maybe, okay, right? I didn't believe a month ago that we would be where we are today. I couldn't imagine our world a month ago how it is today. So why couldn't there be some theological concept that I can't imagine that happens? See it in my own life, there are things that happen that I can't imagine. So I have humility about Mechayei HaMeitim. But secondly, I mean, when you study something like the Spanish flu, and you think about a world that was just dead, just filled with death all around, on the verge of collapse. And somehow, 1919 happened, and 1920, and 1921, and 22, and suddenly, we're like, all of a sudden, the world that we knew a year ago, a month ago, happened. That's Mechayei HaMeitim. That is a world coming back to life, and it happens again and again and again. We went to Poland. We saw the ashes of the Holocaust. That is death. And then we saw the resurrection of the Jewish people. That's Mechayei HaMeitim. And in our own lives, when you're feeling on the verge of despair, and you feel like everything is lost, and then you find some way to come back to a place of hope, that's Mechayei HaMeitim. So I believe very strongly in the spiritual power of Mechayei HaMeitim for people. The big question is, what is death? Is death only literal death? There are so many ways that we die in this world, so many assaults to who we are and how we feel and how we can access the world. Those prayers help us to be reborn again and again and again to life. And if you want to go back to that Christian metaphor, right, for those who are thinking of he is risen, the power of he is risen is he is risen and so can I. So can I, no matter what happens to me in my life. So that for me is Mechayei HaMeitim, and I feel it very strongly when I pray it all the times that we do in our services.
One short thing so everybody can talk. When I'm praying, I'm thinking more about this idea of Olam Haba. Yeah. Okay? I and many human beings, we want to believe that there is something after life. And I like this idea that only the righteous ones will, resurrect. I like to think about that. It gives me hope that there is something else after life. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk to Lisa and Dan, but one thing that you said, Michelle, that feels particularly resonant is whether resurrection of the dead could be a very important prayer for COVID-19.
Yeah.
Take
It is to me.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
me.
So we'll go back to that. Dan, just because I dabbled with you 21 times yesterday, you didn't say it twice. What do you think about when you say these words? I mean, you are Mr. Shachos Min Klamar. I mean, more than any of us, you are Mr. Shachos Min Klamar, and you have been for 30 years here every day, every morning, every night. Shachos Min Klamar. What do you think about when you say these words?
Yeah, it's a hard topic. I mean, I was thinking, you guys have very similar approaches. I was thinking about the structure of the bracha, and where we have in Gevurot the idea that we talk about what God's power is, and I think more when I think about the structure of that is that it's not that God actually does this, but God has the power to do this, and this is what makes God God, and not no other force. So that was one thing. The other thing I was thinking about is the disconnect between that and Yizkor. Because we have Yizkor. I mean, whether it's a disconnect or a connection, it could be both. The idea that if we believe in Nechayim 18, but yet every year we recall 4 times a year we recall, actually 5 if you think about your site, the times all those that have passed on. That it's really a different space than Nechayim 18, because like for me during Yizkor, it's all about the fact that these people are spiritually still here, but they're gone. They're gone, so that their presence is only partially felt, not totally felt. And maybe that's one of the deaths that you were talking about, Michelle. The deaths that we have during our lifetime. So it's just, I'm not really sure. It's just, again, it's just saying it every day, as you said, 21 times, whatever. So I always think of it more metaphorically than I think of it as actual. But I do believe that 2,000 years ago, there was an actual belief in the actual physical resurrection, that people would come back exactly as they were, whatever that meant.
Mm-hmm.
So that, again, we have it's really hard to read 21st century people into, 2nd century and even before, like 3rd, 4th, 5th century before the Common Era.
Right.
How people think. So it's a point where we can just get lost.
Okay.
It's a point where you can just get lost. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Aliza.
So, at some point along the way, I looked up the saying "saved by the bell." And where does "saved by the bell" come from? Apparently, in the Middle Ages, people used to appear dead, and they would bury them with strings they would, I guess this is how the saying goes, they would ring that bell, and they wouldn't actually be dead. There was this way in which people's bodies would go into a coma, or we don't exactly know what happened to them, but they would seem dead to everyone around them and then would come back. And that has been, I mean, who knows if that's even true? It seems a little bogus, especially now that I revisit it and think is that possible? But I do know that there are people who seem dead, who are in a coma, whose brains are not functioning the way that we think that they should, and they do sometimes, not always, certainly not most commonly, but on rare occasions they do come back to life. And so
You're not talking when you guys give a sermon or I sing long service, right? They seem dead, but they are fall asleep.
well, now I'm learning all sorts of new applications. But I think of that, and I think rather than thinking about the bringing back to life, I think about how we understand death and what is death, and that makes it really possible for me to feel like, Michelle, in that way, it's what you were saying about recognizing our power to come back. And I don't think that's just a Christian thing. I think that's actually when we say that the things that I think are dead, God reminds me are not dead. The parts of myself that I think are dead, God reminds me are not dead. And that there are possibilities beyond what I can imagine. That feels like a very important thing to hold on to.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that the resonance of this is it suggests that possibility of rebirth and renewal, whether it's the Jewish people from Auschwitz to Israel, or from the Spanish flu to the Roaring '20s, that there is this divine force where it seems like all hope is lost, Spanish flu, and then Roaring '20s. It seems like all hope is lost, the Holocaust, then Israel, and therefore it seems like all hope is lost, COVID-19, and then something that's a new chapter that is going to be promising. And in that way, it's, you know, as to whether we'll actually see, you'll see your Aunt Vanessa again, who knows? We'll play the humility card. You know, God, if you do that, I'd love to hug my Aunt Vanessa again. But in the meantime, what about the Spanish flu and the Roaring '20s? What about Auschwitz in Israel? And maybe, therefore, there is some divine force of renewal when it seems hope is lost. There is rebirth. What about, but then there's also kind of Dan's response, which is, who knows what to make of this. So I want to ask the following question. Let's say, for our folks who are stuck at home day after day, they want a connection, they tune in, and they're not thinking about the meaning of the words in the way that we have just been thinking about the meaning of the words, and you all came up with a beautiful interpretation of it that kind of makes it relevant. Well, let's say they don't get there. Or let's say any of us is having a bad day, or we're not into it on any given day, which happens all the time to anybody who has an active prayer life. Nobody, even who prays every day, can really pray with passion and kavanah every day. That's just not how any of us are built. Sometimes you just show up and you go through the motions. That's just how we're built. Or let's say back in the days when we used to be able to meet, or in the days when we'll meet again, you're a bar mitzvah guest, and you don't know which end of the siddur is up, but you're there. So here's my question: what's the spiritual value, or any value, of prayer when you don't think about these words and you don't feel these words? You're just there. You're just going through the motions of a prayer experience, not thinking about the words, not feeling the words, maybe just showing. It's like a walk in the woods, but you're just in the chapel or the sanctuary. What's the resonance or the experience, the value of that? Elisa?
For me, it feels like a good yoga routine, in the sense that yoga is about moving through different postures and noticing how they impact you, and the structures and shapes of our mouths as we form these words, it's a series of postures that our ancestors have been doing for thousands of years. And it does have an impact. In some ways, it reminds me, they've done some interesting learning about the physical effects of like putting on tefillin. And there's a biochemical response to that action of putting on the straps that our bodies respond, and I think our spirits respond in the same way to the words, that when we make those shapes in our mouths, it has a larger effect. Even if we don't understand them, even if we're just like going through the transliteration, those shapes do something.
Mm. Elias, before I ask you, I want to just, you do a beautiful repetition of Chazarah on Musaf, Shabbat these weeks, and you seem to really get off on the following song, and you just really come alive, even alive for your own high standards of life. And this is what you come alive to. This is where you really go off. Okay? No. This is your move, okay? And I just want to ask you about the relation between content and form here, okay? Here's where you go off. Offerings for the day of Shabbat, 2 yearling lambs without blemish, together with 2/10 of an ephah of choice flour, mingled with oil as a grain offering, with the proper libation. A burnt offering for every Shabbat, in addition to the daily burnt offering and its libation.
My wife is calling.
Yeah. Now, could you sing that? I mean, offerings for this is Uviyom HaShabbat. You just like your face lights up. Go.
שני כבשים בני
Keep going. Give us our money's worth.
ושני עשרו ניסולה, מלחמנו בשמן ונזכור. ושני עשרו ניסולה, מלחמנו בשמן ונזכור. Hey, I'm resurrecting the dead.
Now here's my question. You get so off on offerings for the day of the Sabbath, 2 yearling lambs, little cutie pie lambs. It's like cutie pie lambs that never did anything. We get to chop the lambs, we get to chop the lambs, we're gonna chop and then we're gonna burn and we're gonna reduce them to ashes as a sign of our love of God. Bring me 2 lambs every day. Ah, yes,
Please,
yes, yes.
can we skip that praise
Yes.
today? And
No.
we chant that in the same way with the
so-
microphone live streaming?
No, yeah, so Elias, here's my question. You just get off on killing these poor 2 yearling lambs. What are you thinking?
Can you change the question and respond to what Alisa said?
What are you
I want to
thinking?
respond to what Alisa was saying about
No,
yoga.
no. What are you thinking? Seriously, what like that? I'll give you another one as well. But when you sing, you just love Shnei Chvasim B'nei Shnat Menim, these 2 little lambs,
Wait,
and it just so
can I come
happens.
to his rescue here a little bit?
Yeah.
Because the refrain is Yismechu b'malachutecha, right?
No, that comes
It
later.
is-
Thank you for
but
trying
it
to
comes,
save me.
it comes in, right? That like, there's a joy in worship and being part of a, now this may be a reach, right? But the melody has to do with the connection to our ancestors that you were speaking about so beautifully, and the idea that it's not necessarily literally what they did, but the fact that we are standing in this long line of tradition. I'm trying to help you, my friend.
No, but I appreciate it. But here's I
There
want
are
to
a few
come
things
back.
here, Wes. There are a few things. One
Yeah.
is whoever wrote this melody, we have to ask him why.
No, you're singing it.
That's right. I'm singing it because it's a beautiful melody. I love the Hasidic style of the song itself. And I'm trying to channel in what the Jewish people felt in those days when they are bringing the offerings. Obviously, if you sing it in the way you're chanting it, I mean, it's embarrassing. But no, your chanting is beautiful. It's embarrassing to think about the meaning in this day and age. But I mean, I always think about, how many of us are connected by chanting the same prayers, not only in this time, in this era, around the world, Jewish people around the world, but also going back to centuries. And that is the connection, that Ledor Vador is not only teaching, the next generation what it needs to be taught, but also, being together with so many generations ago.
Right.
And can I respond to what Alisa said before?
Yes, well, really.
So Alisa, you were talking about yoga, and in a way, I feel like we have some parts of Jewish yoga here at Temple Emmanuel, and that comes on Shabbat Aleichem. Not so much because of us, but how many times we, receive emails from congregants who come to Shabbat Aleichem, and they say, we just close our eyes and stay there and go with the flow of the melody. And perhaps they don't pay attention that much to the words, but the melody is so spiritual and it brings them to a different place and a different time, and they are able to find spirituality through that. And so I like that. That sometimes prayer not only means, to think deeply about the words. There is the rational way of praying and the spiritual way of playing, and more the feelings of the heart and liberating the mind.
Right, there's
Can I-
words,
can I
there's
inter-
words and music, right?
Yeah.
So we're words people,
Right.
right? But there's also this element of music, that the music speaks to the soul in a language that is not always connected to what the words are saying, as you so beautifully pointed out, right? But that there's this extra spiritual dimension of the music, and our tradition has that legacy through our Hasidic tradition, right? Last night when we began Kabbalat Shabbat in Shabbat Alive, because we didn't have the traditional Kabbalat Shabbat last night due to the holiday, we did Nigunim. The tradition of Nigunim and the idea that there's a language to words, but there's also a language to music that speaks to us, is really powerful. And so that sitting back and receiving that language is also a holy act.
Dan, let me get your comment, and then I want to close with one final question that I'm going to ask each of you to answer.
It really has to do with both of what you both said. You know, the idea, the word resonate, when you say music resonate, it really has to do with physical resonance. Music has the power. This is why music is the international language. It has the power to make us feel and really our bodies literally vibrate in a certain way with the. So therefore, the text is not always needed. And the other melody I was thinking of is Hashamdu in the High Holidays. You know, about that. You know, the same way like we have sinned. You know, this happy melody right there.
Right.
But I was thinking that, you know, the idea that we resonate, our bodies physically resonate, vibrate with the sound, so that the sounds of the words, the rhythm of the words, making our bodies all connect physically, I think is really the power of prayer. So when you say Michaye Hametim, you may not be thinking about what does that really mean, but you're thinking about you're involved in the power of the communal vibration, and that connects us all.
Elisa.
So I want to come back to the Two Little Lambs for a moment.
Two cutie pie
It feels really emblematic, actually, of this whole conversation, in that those two little lambs are an opportunity for us to realize what God wants of us, and it doesn't make any logical sense. And my understanding of the Amidah is that the words that we say of our Amidah were developed as the Kohanim, the priests were in the temple offering sacrifices. Those were the words that they said while they made those sacrifices. We lost the sacrifices, but we kept the words. And I can't, what would it be like to know exactly what God wants and to be able to do that? Like, that's got to bring so much joy. It doesn't make any logical sense, those cutie pie little lambs, it doesn't make sense, but also, I'm going to do this and God's going to be so happy. And I think that's our prayer when we get to Mechaye Meitim. It doesn't make any logical sense. We know that there's a God up there that wants something of us, that wants this of us, and we pray that someday we're going to be able to understand.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys. So I want to just end with a question that every one of us has heard from our beloved members here and people who are not members here. It's the following question. Rabbi Chazan, I just cannot connect with prayer. I'll be honest with you, I find it boring. I don't really speak Hebrew. The minute I'm in a service, I just can't wait to get out. It's like, especially a long service. And I just can't connect with prayer. What would you say to that person who says, I can't connect with prayer? What's your elevator pitch for why it's worth their effort to try?
You're preaching to the choir, Wes.
Right.
Well, I understand.
Look, we've had these conversations a million times. What always pops out for me is there's this beautiful Hasidic parable about a man who said his son is getting into a lot of trouble and is just off and just cannot connect with his son in any way, shape, or form. And the rabbi says, love him. And the man comes back and says, he's absolutely impossible. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And the rabbi says, great, love him more. And so for me, the answer with prayer, it's one of those pieces where it doesn't happen to you. You have to bring yourself to it. So prayer happens for all of us in spontaneous ways throughout our days, not part of this book, no matter how much of a disbeliever you are. If you can bring that into your experience with the book, then the book comes alive. And people do that in very different ways. There's the Yekeh tradition, where you do that through your intellect. What do the words say? Can I connect with what the words say? Think about an Israeli praying, right? They know all the words, and it's an intellectual exercise. And then there are the ways that we've been talking about the resonance, stand so beautifully, the resonance of the music or the feeling of yoga, or you bring yourself there, and miraculous things can happen. But you got to try.
I like everything you said, and I like also the analogy you made with the tefillin that produces a chemical change in the body. Praying does the same to me. It's in a way I feel it, I need it when I'm not here, and it adds a second dimension or first dimension, whatever you want to call it, to regular life. And don't come to Shabbat morning 2.5 hours. Don't come to Yom Kippur, but begin with the short services. How many people, we used to hear that, but now if you ask again the question, how many people have been connected through live streaming for a weekly Mariv service that is only half an hour, it would change completely. Very often we hear now the email, I never got into services, I don't enjoy services, but now this is the connection we make.
Dan? I can't connect with prayer. Tell me what I'm missing.
I would say what you're missing is an opportunity to find the best of who you are. And whether it's in the words of the Siddur, or just taking 10 minutes out of your day to say, what is it that makes me who I am? What is it that can make me the best that I can be? Whether it's relationships, whether it's family, whatever it happens to be. If you just this is what prayer is. It's trying to find the best that I can be, and if I take a few minutes every day to reflect on that, then that's really what it's all about. And then, as I say, then the words are just extra. The words in the Siddur are just extra.
Thank you, Dan. Aletha, last word.
I'm not sure you want to end with me.
Please.
This is a conversation I'm in all the time, and with loved ones who really don't like prayer and don't do prayer, and it's not their thing. And I think over time I've gotten to this place where I'm seeing prayer more as one aspect of Avodat Hashem, and I think it can be really alienating and disorienting to be a part of a spiritual community but feel disconnected from one of the primary means of connection and access. And so I think for someone who, there's like two places, right? One person who says, I don't feel connected to prayer and I don't like prayer. And with that person, I would say okay, find what's your avodah, what's your way of serving? And that might be learning, and that might be actual tikkun olam, and that might be justice, and be open to the idea that your service might change. And for the person who says, I don't yet like prayer, but I would like to, then that feels like a conversation, a place where we can learn together and find a way to incorporate the best parts of themselves in a service to God that works for them and that brings them alive and brings them, I think ideally, whatever our practices are, all of us wake up and get out, do our davening, do our practice, whatever that looks like, and come out at the end and yes, I'm ready for this day.
It's very keneged arba abanim, the four sons. In other words, you take each person, their question, and figure out the way to respond. So I will just say before I'll ask you guys to end with a nigun, spiritual nigun. And to bring all this to a close, I personally really feel very deeply the power of Techiyat HaMetim through minyan, right? I mean, at 3 different points in my life, I have gone from dead to risen because of minyan. When I lost my dad, I was 20 years old. It was December of 1981. I was home back from New England winter. I was 20, lost my best friend. I was dead. And because of minyan, I was risen. When I was 55, I lost my mother. I thought I would never, ever survive losing my mother. I was dead. And because of this space, every day, every morning, every night, every morning, every night, every morning, every night, Yikadal v'Yikadash. I lost my mom. I thought I'll never come back. I'm back because of this. And now COVID-19. It's just endless. I mean, I was reading the David Brooks pieces about, David Brooks wrote his New York Times readers and said, hey, tell me about your interior life. How are you doing? How's your interior life? And then he wrote 2 columns afterwards saying, oh my God, what you said gutted me, G-U-T-T-E-D. It gutted me. People are so devastated. There's so much pain, there's so much desperation, there's so much sadness, there's so much brokenness, there's so much hopelessness, there's so much serious depression, serious anxiety, serious edge of the kind that David Brooks says, I've never seen this level of despair ever. And then he actually, that's one column, and then he quotes a lot of these columns, right? This is kind of like a death zone that we're in with COVID-19, and I find prayer resurrection of the dead. He is risen, I am risen, we are risen. That by coming together, for me personally, just seeing you guys every day, I am risen. And then davening the services every day, I am risen. And saying Yikadavi Kadash, the words that lifted me up when I lost my dad, the words that lifted me up when I lost my mom, the words that lift us up now. So I actually feel the power of Kriyat HaMetim through daily prayer. But I will say it's not about the words. It's not about the meaning of the words. So Mordechai Kaplan's teaching, say what you mean what you say. I mean, I'm sure it was wise and profound in many ways. That doesn't actually take in my experience of prayer, but it's in ways that I can't even articulate or defend, but just feel and experience. Somehow, coming communion, particularly when our friends are here, but even now when you friends are here, and our friends are watching online, there is just something about that experience in a deep way that resurrects hope when hope is gone. So I'd like to ask you to end our class with a spiritual nigun.
And we do the Boger Nigun from Unorthodox.
Love that. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you at 9:30, and if you want to find out what happens to those 2 yearling lambs, please tune in at about 11 o'clock.
It's a cliffhanger.
Shabbat Shalom. Oh, hola.